What is up, everybody? It's Rob coming at you with the Thursday nightly watch list, and it's going to be a great one. I mean, we absolutely killed it in the market today. We hit an insane trade on Novo Nordisk, and we have a lot of awesome news to share with you. So let's get right into it. All right. So, first things first, right? The markets ended down today, right? The SPY S&P 500 down 1%. The Nasdaq almost 2%, and the Dow almost 1%. So, relatively speaking, right, it was actually a big day today down. So the last 2 days, right, we've actually seen some movement. Okay, so look at this historically speaking. Here you go, right. The SPY hit a high of $689.70. We're now trading around 670. So ever since that high, right, we have been seeing a move down. Okay. And this recent, crazy run up was that AI bubble I was telling everyone about, where we were just seeing things absolutely fly. And ever since then, we have been coming down. So stock futures were, pretty much steady this morning coming into the open. But, the big mover, right, that you'll see it from today was, the Supreme Court on tariffs. So they are debating that case. And at the moment, right, it's really looking like the Supreme Court's going to say that tariffs, can't happen. So Trump actually came in and said, well, if you aren't going to allow me tariffs, well, I'm just going to put a, import ban on everything. So that was a crazy statement that he came out and said, but he does have this crazy move in his back pocket if he doesn't get his way. But the headline that came out today from him was that, no new tariff announcements are coming, and he won't announce tariffs while the Supreme Court of the United States, case is pending. So basically, market ended red today. You're still seeing a lot of profit taken after the crazy run-up we've recently had. And the Supreme Court is now debating the tariffs, which, are going to have a huge impact on these companies. So also, like I was telling you, we made an insane trade on Novo Nordisk. And that's what I tell you guys, to always stay locked in with the news, okay, and watch the nightly watch list, because, I'm giving you free plays that are going up 200%. And today, as you can see from this huge move up, right, that was what we were able to capitalize on, right? And if you watched the watch list yesterday, right, you'll kind of see this move up here yesterday, which we called as well. I was telling everyone, I said, look, Trump is going to have a meeting at 11 a.m. where he is going to talk about the pharmaceutical companies Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk. And they're big names because of their fat shots, right, that they came out with. And everyone's looking at that. And he actually, tariffed them and all this. But since they agreed to reduce their prices for Medicare, he said, okay, well, guess what? Today, you guys are going to get a 3-year U.S. tariff reprieve, okay? So Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk are not going to have to pay tariffs for 3 years now that they agreed to these lower prices. And like I was telling you guys before, we actually traded Pfizer on this, okay? So do you see this huge move up on Pfizer? Well, they were one of the first names to actually come into the market and make a deal with Trump. And we actually saw, when that news first came out, we got a huge move. And then they had their press release in the White House with Trump, and we saw a huge pop. So I said, okay, well, Novo is lagging, right, behind this news, right? It's a really beat up stock, and I think we could see a big pop and some volatility during this meeting. So let's trade it. Let's buy some options and let's make some fucking money on the the option volatility. And that's exactly what we did. So I can show you here the trades that took place. Okay, ignore the ones at the top, but look at NVO. This morning we were coming in here buying contracts, look, for 74 cents, 60, 57, $55. And, I scaled into the position this morning, okay? And then I scaled out of it. Once we got the news, boom, the first pop, I said, okay, let's get some of this money back. Sold them for $131. Boom, the stock kept going up, sold them for $150, sold them for $155, and then I got out for the last one at $170, all on this move, okay? And then the stock gave it all back up. So that's why, right, when we got that huge move up, I took advantage of the implied volatility getting jacked, sold all the contracts, made a really awesome trade, and it all came from following the news, being prepared, following the market, and got to take advantage of that opportunity. So, by watching this watch list, you can follow along with the news I'm sharing you, all the plays I'm making, what's moving the market, all the individual names, and make great trades and great long-term investments and make a fuck ton of money. So that's exactly what we did today on Novo Nordisk. But I would also like to continue, the watch list on, what has been going on. And the next thing I want to talk about is gold. So, I'm going to pull up the futures contract for gold here. And what you're going to see is, gold is up around $4,400. Okay. And it actually had, relatively a pretty big sell-off, but gold actually reclaimed that $4,000 mark. Okay. So that was a big level, psychological level. Look, you can see it popped above it and then we came back down. But I'm bringing this to everyone's attention because, if gold decides to make its next move up, well, here you are. You're getting this consolidation. And there is a possibility, okay, that maybe you see gold continue its move up, okay? So keep your eyes on gold, okay? There's been a lot of volatility, which historically speaking, is not exactly there. So big opportunity to make some money in gold right now. Either trade in the futures, look at gold ETFs, right? GLD options, look, that's how you can play it. But there you are with gold. And then we also saw Celsius, okay? They have just reported their earnings and they ended down 25% today, okay, on their earnings and guidance miss. And Celsius, this stock ran up to over $100, okay, came down to 21 and then popped all the way back up to 66, okay? Now, this isn't necessarily a name that I like or would add to my long-term portfolio, but, I told people about this. I said, if anything, there's probably just going to be a buyout offer one day where, maybe Pepsi comes in or some company and just acquires the company. But, you're going to see a lot of volatility in this name because of its earnings growth and, its guidance. So what you saw here was an earnings missed and you got a haircut of 25%. So that's the risk you took by trying to invest in this huge run-up that just recently had and try to get in on the growth of Celsius, 25% haircut. And then another thing I wanted to share with you was DraftKings, okay? Now, they ended up today relatively flat, right? And then you saw this move down after market, which we're going to have to look into. But they actually reported that with ESPN, okay? ESPN signed DraftKings as its new sports betting partner. So before, right, it was actually ESPN Bet, but, DraftKings, what I want everyone to know is they actually had this this agreement before. So DraftKings actually used to be a SPAC, and it traded under this really weird ticker symbol, Acquisition Corp. And, they ran up to 74, came down to $10, okay, and had this crazy movement. But DraftKings, right, was actually the sponsor originally of ESPN. So, this headline came out, which did help the stock, okay? You see this move up, but really I don't think it's that big of a deal. I know the market's going to try to use that to move the stock around, but it's, it's not the best. And they did report earnings, that's why you're seeing the stock come down. Looks like they had an EPS of negative 26 cents versus an expectation of negative 42 cents. So they're losing money, but they didn't lose as much as what analysts expected. And then revenue missed. It came in at 1.14 billion. Analysts were expecting 1.22. And then they also lowered their full year sales guidance, okay, between 5.9 billion to 6.1 billion. And their previous guidance was 6.2 billion to 6.4. So look, that's why the stock went down after hours on earnings, because they lowered their sales revenue guidance and they actually missed on revenue. So it makes sense. But that's the headline I have for you. DraftKings, ESPN signs them as their new sports betting partner, but I don't really think much is going to come out of that. And then Planet Fitness, okay, PLNT, they had earnings popped up over 15%. And I always follow this name because it actually sold off a lot. You'll see here during the COVID pandemic, right, when the shutdown happened. So this is one of those, it's a growth stock, gym company, and they sold off, and it would have been a good investment to make, over time. And I think, these anytime gyms, 24/7, I think Planet Fitness, they are good companies, okay? And I always keep it on watch, but they were down, they did pop, over 15% after hours, closed up 13 after earnings. So there's that. And then Hood, right? Everyone's been seeing this crazy move on Robinhood this year. I mean, you've seen, look at this price movement. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, back in 2024 here, look, $32, and now we're all the way up, to 127. But the stock hit a high of 153. And that is because, Robinhood is just continuing to kill it on their revenue numbers they're putting out. And they just reported earnings recently, and they doubled their revenue, okay, and it beat expectations. So, this stock here, really big growth stock name company, and I mean, they're just killing it, bringing in lots of business. What I have for you here too is Papa John's, okay? Now, here you go here. And as we know, we've been following this name for a minute now because of buyout rumors, okay, creating lots of volatility. They just had their earnings down 5% pre-market. So, we'll have to follow this name because just maybe, right, we do see some more buyout offers coming on the name. So, keep the eye out for Papa John's and any news that comes out regarding the buyout offer, okay? And then this is also something that we used to talk about. This was a name we were trying to play on the Pfizer news because back in the day, I say back in the day like this was like years ago, but when Pfizer made that deal with Trump, right, for the Medicare plans, well, Trump came out and said he's going to be doing this thing called Trump RX, which is where you're going to be able to sell directly to the consumer at cheaper prices. Well, originally there was rumors going around that this company, GoodRx, would help partner with that website to sell the drugs. But headline came out today that actually said other drug websites such as GoodRx will not be partnering with Trump RX, so it sent the stock down. And I did actually trade this a little bit today, but nothing crazy. We were able to scalp some options for like 3 cents, and I sold them back for like 5. So every $3 turned into 5. I was just scalping the market maker, but nothing crazy. I mean, the stock is already killed, as you can see. And, this news here, I mean, just, keeps the story going of this company is going to die one day. So they had hope with that Trump RX partnership, but that's no longer. So you can wipe that off the board. And then one of the things I wanted to share with you is Take-Two Interactive, okay? Right? The makers of Grand Theft Auto. They just reported their earnings, okay? And the stock is down after hours, okay? Because the company said that they're again going to delay the release of GTA 5, okay? So their numbers did come out, and their EPS, okay, the expected numbers was a loss of 0.62 cents, came in at 0.73, so they missed by 18% there. And then they were expected to bring in $1.74 billion in revenue, and they actually generated 1.96, so they beat by 13% there. So, you're kind of seeing a little bit mixed bag, but as we know, the EPS number is negative because they're spending a boatload of money on the production of GTA 6, but they keep delaying the launch. I mean, it was just pushed today to November 19th of 2026, okay? And before that, I believe it was supposed to get released in May of 2026. So, they're spending all this money to make the game, and investors are going to want a return on investment. So every time they delay the release, well, they have to push those cash flows out, okay? And as we all know, a dollar's worth more than a dollar tomorrow. So investors reacted to the headline, right, of GTA getting delayed, while at the same time, we did get the EPS number where they lost more money than expected. So there you go, guys. That is the news on Take-Two. And then here, look, it's earnings season, like I've been telling you guys. And I want to share, what we have to look for before the open on Friday. You have Constellation Energy, Wendy's, okay, Canopy Growth, which is a wheat company, Six Flags, okay. So what I wanted to share with you here was Wendy's, okay. This stock here has been absolutely beaten up. And like I've been telling you guys, we all know that all the food stocks this year have been absolutely killed. And it's one of the reasons why we added Chipotle into the long-term portfolio, quality name. And then look at Wendy's here, okay? I mean, absolutely getting killed over the past year. And it should be interesting to watch this stock, in its numbers because, for any reason, I don't know if consumers decided to shop more at Wendy's this quarter and they have great earnings. Well, that's going to send the stock flying because you have not been seeing great earnings coming out of these restaurant and food stocks. So if Wendy's can pull something off, you're going to see a big movement there. And then, like I have for you here, fun is the ticker symbol. Now, I've been putting you guys onto this for a hot minute now. And, this is definitely, something to watch. And look, it was down over 10% today. But like I was telling you guys, look, Travis Kelce, okay, did take an investment in this company with a private party. And so they were an activist investor trying to turn this company around. So they got Travis Kelce involved to take a stake. And they do have their earnings tomorrow. So looks like the stock is down 10% today. And I think someone's trying to front run that movement. So it's going to be really interesting to see where these earnings come out because you're already having a really big movement before the earnings. So I guess someone in the market maybe knows something already, maybe not. But they are front running that release because if we pull the chart out, right? Well, what you're going to see is, look, this is the news when it got released, okay? Look, when the stock got released, an activist investor was getting involved with Travis Kelce. You did see this big move up, right? Like 21 up to 27, we'll call it. But then look, ever since that news came out, you've just been seeing massive selling, okay? So, possibly this could actually be a good opportunity to get into the name. I mean, you already know that Travis Kelce's getting involved, activist investor, and they're possibly a buyout offer. So look, this is really interesting. I mean, you're at 3-year lows. I'm trying to pull the stock out. I mean, look, even if you want to look at the Corona low, the panic sell, it was a low of 1147. So here we are sitting on 1839. So look, I would really be looking into this name right now, okay? And especially keep your eyes on earnings. This is going to be a really interesting one. So there's that. And then this is why I have plays to watch, right? Every morning I come up with a list of some of the names and I'm going to share with you guys. So this morning I was looking at DoorDash because they had an earnings which sent the stock down 20%. Duolingo, they were down over 25%. Elf is another one. They were down over 20%. Snapchat popped over 15% because they teamed up with Perplexity AI. So look, all of these, I mean, you saw huge movements after their earnings, right? Over 20%. Huge volatility, right? Can create opportunity. Path, right? AI company I recommend you all take a look into. And they teamed up with Microsoft Azure. Pinterest had earnings, right? And right, they were down over 20%. So huge movement. And then this morning, look, NVO and Lilly. And I had a note, 11 a.m. because that was when Trump was supposed to go live. He was late to the meeting. It started at 12. But nonetheless, that was what we made a huge trade on, made a killing, great play. And then I also wanted everyone to look at the tariff stocks like Nike, Cat, Best Buy, and Gap because like I told you at the beginning of the watch list, right, the Supreme Court is having, their case and they're going to make a decision if the Trump tariffs are legal. So these are the names that you're going to want to watch. Nike, Cat, Best Buy, and Gap. So I'm going to show you some charts right now, but let me take a drink because I've been talking for almost 20 minutes now straight. But look, so let's pull up the chart. And what I did was, like I told you guys on the watch list yesterday, Poly Market, right? The prediction sites came out and said there's only like a 25% chance that the Supreme Court, rules in favor of Trump tariffs. So it created this huge move yesterday up in the tariff stocks like Nike. And then today it actually held because the case is ongoing. Now, some of the names I already showed you. Like Nike's already down big on the year, okay? So if the tariffs don't go through, that's going to be really great for them. And look, it's going to create a really big move. Look, you can see it's down like multi-year lows, Nike. And then, right, so I'm showing historical prices right now, so you can see that. And Caterpillar's going to be another big one, but the problem is, they have already been running up a shit ton, okay? They're already up to highs, so that one's going to be hard to play. And then Best Buy, okay, this one is a big one on the tariffs because of electronics. Now, this could potentially be, a big mover, so keep your eyes on that one because, look, this was the move you saw when the Trump tariffs came out right here, this big move down. So keep your eye on Best Buy. I do think that Nike and Best Buy, are the names that can have movement based on how this, Trump tariff news kind of plays out. And then I wanted you guys to watch Gap, okay? This is another one that can move big, but my top two, high conviction plays are definitely going to be Nike and Best Buy. And then what I had here also was, watch Uber, okay, on that because Lyft had earnings, okay, and the results were good. And the stock actually ended up over 6%. And like I was telling everyone, Uber had great earnings, okay, but, the street kind of sold off their earnings report, even though I thought it was amazing. And we actually ended up making a trade. The stock sold off, which you can see here. And in the morning, we made a trade that one day on the relief rally in the morning, so we scooped up cheap options and later sold them in the day. Look, I'm telling you, right, Lyft just came out, reported earnings, the stock's up. Uber, right, sold off all because they lowered guidance a little bit, or not as much as the street, was expecting. So I still think, this can definitely have a move up, so keep your eyes on Uber. And then, like I was telling you guys too, I was also watching Celsius this morning because they just had, a big move down 25%. So, guys, that is everything I have for you. Oh, and one thing I want to share for you. Airbnb did report earnings after the bell today, and the numbers were actually good, okay? Gross bookings were up, and they beat analyst expectations, and that is a shame because Airbnb is one of these great, companies I do like growth name that I would love to put in a long-term portfolio, but I would love to add the name under $100. You can see that this name has been trading sideways for years. Since the IPO in 2022. So, it's pretty much dead money. But that's why if you get it cheap enough, okay, if you can get it at $100, right, and it goes back up to 120, well, there you go, 20% return. And it is a name I like potentially for long-term portfolio under $100. So, guys, that is everything I have for you, right? This is what I was watching this morning. Here are the earnings we have at the open tomorrow, so keep your eyes out on them. And then at the same time, here is your news, okay? And what moved the market today. So that's everything I have for you, all right? Let's stay locked in, right? If you don't have one yet, get a long-term portfolio. That's the most important thing. I don't want any one of you guys trying to go into the market and trade before you have a long-term portfolio, okay? If you understand how to invest for the long-term and can actually do it, right, it's going to make you a trader 10 times better because if you can understand how the market works in the long term, you'll be able to trade the short-term movements, okay? But first things first, get to long-term and share with me, any names you guys are looking at, and I'm happy to respond about what I think about them, and it's awesome. So let's stay locked in, guys, and stay safe. Peace.